Here it is, the 26th of February. It's Friday, and where I live, it's a beautiful, beautiful sunny day. That doesn't mean it's really warm, but it's sunny, so it's not raining. And I live on the west coast of Canada, and we get lots of rain. So, hope you're having good weather wherever you are as you watch this call. Today, I'm going to talk about the power of acknowledgement, and from the perspective of acknowledging ourselves and acknowledging others. I've been reflecting on this week um, in relation to a conversation I had with my coach, who is a new coach for me. And one of the requirements of every session at the end is to answer the question, what value did I bring to that session? And this is an uncomfortable question and required me to really be reflective around that. And as I was saying yesterday, to have the right answer. Well, there is no right answer, but um, just to sit in the space of really looking at what value did you bring to this session? Because in a coaching session we often think, the coach is the on the hierarchy, and we're the client and they know more than we do. And um, the work that we do is not about that. The work that we do is about really all about the client. And that's the way it should be. And it's very different being the coach than being the client. So in this case, I am, of course, in the client chair. And responding at the end, what value did I bring, really sort of stopped me. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today, because uh, when we are acknowledging ourselves, there's a difference between acknowledging myself and acknowledging someone else. It's much more comfortable to acknowledge other people than it is to acknowledge myself. And you have to wonder why that is. And in thinking about sort of the culture that we live in, acknowledging ourselves feels hard. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like bragging. It feels self-centered. Um, and I was, brought up to not brag, and certainly that if you are bragging, you're self-centered and it's selfish. So it took me a long time to recognize the power of speaking my successes into the world. Over time, this has been something that I've had to work on acknowledging myself for. And it has been a bit of a transition, and the willingness to stand in the discomfort of speaking my gifts and my wins into the universe. But one of the big wins for the rest of the world when we do that is it enables people that we surround our lives with, we work with, we live with, we socialize with. It allows them to see what is possible. And we are drawn to people that appear to be living into their successes. That's part of our culture. But it's also really aligns us with another human being as um, making it possible for us as well. So to actually not speak your wins and acknowledge yourself out into the world is selfish, versus the other way around, which my beliefs were always that it's self-centered and bragging to speak highly of yourself. So I feel that we are very conditioned in lots of ways not to do that. And I would challenge you to shift how you're showing up in that regard, if that is how you currently be in the world. And of course, when we acknowledge others, it feels easier because it feels like there's no threat, like when there is no threat. So in a competitive environment, oftentimes, or in a corporate environment, people don't acknowledge other people because there's fear of those other people overtaking them in role and power and in an organization. And of course, as a leader, that would be an absolute weakness. So leaders that have lots of confidence and strength in who they are and how they're showing up in the world are really comfortable acknowledging other people for their successes and what they do. And I have to say myself, I steer clear of those that don't, as in my everyday life. If somebody can't pay somebody else a compliment, Those real, I actually have empathy for that, but sometimes, um, sometimes in judgment for sure. I'll have judgment around that for sure. Anyway, it is much easier to help other people see their gifts in the world, but it's just so empowering. When I work with people, one of the things we do at the end of my coaching sessions with my clients is I always ask them what they want to be acknowledged for. And again, them being in the client chair, this is usually awkward, feels clumsy, and uncomfortable. I could acknowledge them, and I do all the way through, but I used to at the end of the session acknowledge them for who they be and what they brought to the session. But now I ask them to not acknowledge themselves. And it's really fabulous to watch them shift over time in their comfort around that. And for those that have employees they work with, even children at home, they start to practice that in their other places in their lives, and the impact on those that they acknowledge, they can see that. And when we tell people what gifts they bring to the world, what gifts they are to the world, it's just, there's a feeling that is like, it's a feeling of being heard and being felt. And we don't often get that in the world. It's very busy. People are very focused on themselves. Um, you don't have a lot of places in your life where somebody is present 100% for you. And that's the gift of coaching, and certainly has been for me. That has changed the dynamics up in my life tenfold, is working with a coach who actually has really empowered me to see the gifts that I have and that I can give to other people. And part of that is truly being with and acknowledging people for what they bring into the world. So um, I would ask you today to take a moment to reflect on your wins and what you would like to acknowledge yourself for, say, for the last 4 or 5 months. To sit down and spend half an hour and really think through what have you accomplished and really acknowledge yourself for that. I find I work with a lot of people that are very driven, and they don't spend any time there. And I have to say, it's a practice, and something that we really have to notice to change that. People that are really driven, they're on to the next thing, and they people that are really smart and really driven, they don't tend to think that what they've done is that big a deal because they expect that of themselves. They expect high standards, high results, good outcomes. And so they tend to not really pay much mind to their successes. They'll definitely pay a lot of mind to when they mess up, which is part of being a leader, but part of growing as a human being. But it's really interesting if you are somebody who's really driven. And I was working with someone, or I am working with somebody, and a little while ago, we were talking about great successes in her area as a corporate leader. And what was fascinating was that, like, not fascinating for me, but fascinating for her to recognize how uncomfortable she was in sitting in, talking about, reflecting on, and writing down all the successes that she has just um, materialized in a big piece of work she was doing. So one of the exercises is for her to write a letter to herself and really um, talk about and acknowledge all the good things that she's done. And again, the practice of this is really important for us to recognize and empower ourselves and believe in ourselves. And when we don't look at our gifts and what we bring into the world and our successes and our wins, whatever you want to call them, when we don't acknowledge those, we don't really empower ourselves. And also, we don't really share with the world. And as I said, it's a great benefit to those in your world to see what's possible. And when you speak your wins and acknowledge yourself, you are showing others that that's what confidence is, and that's what empowering oneself is. And oftentimes we tend to totally diminish what we do. We say, oh, it's no big deal. And the other thing is that well, we devalue what we do, but we just move on. So we don't celebrate. And I was wondering today if you think this is an area that you might want to strengthen within yourself or those that work with you. One of the things you might do is write down and think about or reflect on how you celebrate your wins. And this is an area I have to say that I am not very good at, something that I have to push myself to do. And again, it's really related to it's not a big deal. I just did what I said I was going to do. But it is really a big deal, and it's really important to acknowledge myself for what I do. So I would ask you, how do you celebrate? And if you don't celebrate, how come? What's that about? Why not? Think about it. I'll leave you with that for this weekend. And I hope you have a great weekend. And I hope that I see you next week. Take care. Bye bye now.